As the U-2 performed significant reconnaissance flights across the globe during the mid to late 50s, the CIA was looking for more. By the late 50s, the Soviets had developed advanced surface-to-air missiles which could effectively target and shoot down the U-2. The Soviets proved this in 1960 with the shoot-down of Francis Gary Powers in 1960. This embarrassed America and almost completely ended the U-2 program. The Soviets were also able to track the U-2 on their radar systems from its first flight over the Soviet Union. Lockheed engineers did not think this was possible at the time due to its high ceiling. This also almost sidelined the program as President Eisenhower was reluctant to fly over the Soviet Union while the Soviets could track the flight. These problems prompted the CIA to look for a faster, higher-flying plane, ideally one with stealth technology. Therefore, in 1959, the agency established Project Oxcart, which would soon create the A-12 Oxcart. To accommodate the testing of this engineering marvel, the Groom Lake facility would have to be modernized and expanded. By early 1960, construction crews were working 24 hours a day, building new living quarters, hangars, and expanding a 10,000-foot runway. Existing U-2 facilities were converted into machine shops and maintenance facilities for the A-12. This is also the time that Groom Lake became known as Area 51 in official correspondence. To support development flights of the A-12, training support aircraft were flown in. This included 8 F-101 Voodoos, 2 T-33S, and a C-130 Hercules, and F-104 and smaller support planes and helicopters. Like the U-2, the A-12 was developed at the Lockheed plant in Burbank, California. The planes were then boxed and shipped on flatbed trucks to Area 51 with support from the Nevada Highway Patrol. On the 26th of February 1962, the first A-12 arrived at Area 51. The A-12 was a product of a short, intensive but highly successful development process spearheaded by Kelly Johnson and his team of extremely proficient engineers. The A in A-12 represented the word Archangel, the nickname for the plane. The 12 represented that the A-12 was the 12th iteration of design for the new plane. The A-12 was truly ahead of its time. Engineers were unable to rely on the technology of the day to meet the plane's high demands. They constantly overcame significant technical challenges and invented solutions for nearly everything. The unprecedented performance of the plane required this. One of the most pressing problems was the material construction of the plane. The A-12 would be made out of 93% titanium, a feat completely unprecedented for the time and uncommon even now. Titanium was extremely rare in the 60s. Surprisingly, the Soviet Union was the leading exporter, which required the CIA to found front companies to purchase large amounts of titanium for civilian purposes. The Soviets would never sell their titanium had they known the real purpose. Titanium was chosen because of its ability to resist high temperatures, its strength-to-weight ratio, and its ability to resist airframe stress at Mach 3. Titanium's strength also made it difficult to machine into large parts. This required engineers to create smaller pieces that were glued to a larger subframe. Titanium was not the only proprietary technology engineers developed. The CIA also wanted the A-12 to maintain stealth by not showing up on radar. Engineers worked extensively on creating radar-absorbing materials which covered the plane and shaping the plane in a way that would reflect radar away from the receiving station. To test its radar cross-section, the A-12 would be mounted on a 50-foot pole. Radar waves would be thrown against it from every direction to measure its cross-section. Results determined further refinement in the shape of the craft and the materials used. This early work in stealth technology would ultimately lay the groundwork for all the stealth planes currently flying today. Expanding on tests of the A-12, the CIA would soon demand an unmanned drone in response to the shootdown and capture of U-2 pilot Gary Powers over Soviet territory. Using the existing A-12 airframe, Lockheed engineers proposed attaching a surveillance drone called the D-21 that would launch off the top of the plane during flight. This drone, flying above Mach 3, would extend the surveillance capabilities of the A-12 into denied areas without risking another Gary Powers incident. Rather than seamlessly integrating into the existing airframe, the D-21 was more of an awkward add-on when it should have been its own separate program. Like the A-12, the D-21 was completed and static tested at Lockheed's California facilities and then shipped to Area 51 in 1964. Flight tests soon began, which were plagued by difficulties from the start. Engineers at Area 51 worked tirelessly between 1964 and 66 to solve a myriad of technical challenges, which culminated in a 1966 flight in which the D-21 reached Mach 3.3 at 90,000 feet. Unfortunately, the technical challenges would never be completely solved, and in July 1966, a test flight resulted in a fatal accident when a D-21 separated from its mothership and failed to start. The drone clipped the rear of the A-12, causing catastrophic damage. Both pilots ejected into the ocean. Unfortunately, pilot Ray Torrick drowned after getting tangled in his flight suit. Co-pilot Lieutenant Colonel Fulton was picked up by a rescue helicopter and survived. Kelly Johnson, the principal engineer behind the D-21, had enough and cancelled the program altogether. The remaining drones were transferred to the Air Force, where they would be test-launched off of B-52 bombers. All the drones would eventually be retired and kept secret until the 1970s, when aviation enthusiasts spotted them in an Air Force boneyard for retired planes. By the end of 1964, the A-12 program would transition from CIA control to an Air Force program. The Air Force wanted their own variant of the A-12, which would be larger, equipped with more advanced sensors and offer more range. The Air Force would call this plane the SR71. However, in President Johnson's announcement speech of the plane, he famously called it the SR71. Rather than correcting the president, Air Force officials accepted the new name. The SR71 would officially enter service in 1966 and contribute significantly in international espionage. It distinguished itself by both its technical abilities and its striking beauty. It resembled an aircraft straight out of a science fiction movie and broke speed records that stand to this day. Most notably, it flew from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. in 1 hour and 4 minutes on March 6, 1990. The contributions that Area 51 made in aerospace technology between the early to mid-60s laid the foundation for a multitude of world-changing aviation technologies. This is not the end, however. There is still much to explore, as the coming decade would introduce the stealth revolution, as well as stolen Soviet fighter jets that would be tested against American planes.